Hi everyone, my name is Shauna in case you don't know, and welcome back to another video. So I just recently finished reading the Chronicles of Narnia, and I have some thoughts. And I thought a nice way to share my thoughts on all of the books in the series would be to rank them, slide them on out of this little box. So there's 7 books in whole in the Narnia series. I read them in chronological order because that's just what my set of the Narnia books is. Like, it's made in chronological order, even though some people firmly believe that you have to read them in publication order. It doesn't really matter one way or the other. It took me 10 or 11 years to read this whole series because I started when I was in the 3rd grade, but I didn't finish it until this year. The Narnia series, in case you somehow are not familiar with it, is about this magical land called Narnia. A lot of these books focus around this family called the Pevensey children and their cousin Eustace Scrubb, although there are some exceptions that don't follow those characters for some odd reason or another. The movies only focus on Voyage of the Dawn Treader, Prince Caspian, and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Let me just get this off my chest. The movies are so much better than the books. Don't waste your time on these books unless you already own them. Do not spend money on these books. They are not worth it. This series is generally a series that people consider to be very Christian. However, I would argue that it is not Christian because I'm pretty sure that you aren't supposed to make your own version of the Bible and replicate it, because that's essentially what these are. Like, C.S. Lewis tried to replicate the Bible, whatever you want to call it, in these stories, because these stories follow the Bible. But anyways, let's get on to my ranking. And I'm doing from best to worst. So I will slowly get more aggressive and salty about these books as the video goes on. Let's start with the best one that I don't even remember that much about. The Silver Chair. This is the 6th book in the chronological order. You might be wondering, why am I putting this number 1 if I don't remember anything about this book? Well, I read this book when I was in the 3rd grade, and I remember really enjoying it. And that's weird because even then I was very critical of books, and I enjoyed it, so something about it was good. I don't know. Also, I'm gonna block my teacher's name, but my teacher literally gave me a copy of this book and wrote me a note in it because I liked it that much that I asked to take it home during Thanksgiving break or whatever break we had, and he gave it to me. And yeah, so this one, gave it 4 stars. It is ranking number 1 in my ranking from best to worst of Narnia. I believe the characters in this one are Eustace Scrubb, Jill, is her last name Pole? Jill Pole? Yeah. And I think Prince Caspian's in it. Is he in it? No, maybe it's some other prince or king that I don't remember. But yes, this was a 4-star read, and it is my favorite in the Narnia series, partly because I just have so many memories of reading it when I was younger and really enjoying it. Although if I read it now, I might not enjoy it as much. But let's just not ruin my childhood, and let's just say this is number 1. Number 2 is, I think, the chunkiest book in the series, but it isn't that chunky, it's really thin. And these are children's books in case you don't know. And this is The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. I always say voyage wrong, so I am sorry about that. Voyage of the Dawn Treader is the 3rd book that Lucy and Edmund are in, and they go back to Narnia, and they go on this traveling little adventure thing with Prince Caspian. It introduces Eustace. It has some of the best magic in the whole series, and it is the most interesting. Although, if I'm being quite honest, this series as a whole is extremely sexist, and there were some sexist things in this book. And also, C.S. Lewis is a terrible writer with really confusing writing that almost seems as if it weren't written for kids, or that kids were smarter when C.S. Lewis was alive. But yes, this was a 3-star read. It is my 2nd favorite in the series, although I wouldn't consider any of these favorites. And let's see what number 3 is. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. This is the first story that everyone is very familiar with. It is the one where the 4 Pevensey children, Lucy, Susan, Edmund, and Peter, go into Narnia for the first time. There's snow because the White Witch has enchanted all of Narnia, and there's a battle. There's Mr. Tumnus. It's an epic read. I gave it 3 stars as well. However, this is a sexist piece of trash. Let's be honest. The whole problems in this book were Edmund's fault, yet every single one blames freaking Lucy. It ain't Lucy's fault. I'm sorry, Mr. C.S. Lewis, but just because someone is a female doesn't mean that they are causing all of the problems in the world. That's not how the world works. Both men and women can cause problems. Stop saying that it's only the women that are problematic when it's literally just the freaking men. Can you see me getting aggressive already? Ah! C.S. Lewis, you're a sexist piece of trash. Let's pull out the fourth one in my ranking. This one goes to The Magician's Nephew. This was a bit of a weird book, if I'm being quite honest. You can really see the biblical references in it, but I was like, it's just weird, and I don't feel like this is the one that you should start off reading the series, even though this is technically number one in the chronological order. I just felt like it's just a weird start to a series, and then it wasn't that spectacular. And The Magician's Nephew is like the start of Narnia, where Diggory and Polly, I had to remember their names and look it up because I read this like a year or two ago, but Diggory and Polly are the kids in this book, and it's the start of Narnia, and like, it's not the worst book in the world, but it's not the best, and it's also really strange. Oh, and that one was a 3-star read. There's only 3 left, and these ones all sucked so much, and I barely have anything good to say about them. So the third from last one in my ranking is Prince Caspian. So this one has the 4 Pevensie children, and it is the final book that Susan is really in. And I gave it 2 stars. It was like less confusingly written than C.S. Lewis's other works. But like after the first 2 chapters, it was just boring as crap. Like, no thanks. No one wants to waste their time reading this boring book. I don't even remember it that well, if I'm being quite honest, because it was so boring that my brain like forced me to forget everything I read. It was just so boring. Oh, and there was sexism thrown all throughout this book. You know, if I ever feel like roasting the series in the future again, I will full on read each book and mark every single sexist thing in this series, and you'll never hear the end of it from me. But yes, there are 2 books left that I have to put in my ranking, and the one that I am putting next is The Last Battle. This is the 7th book in the chronological order, and The Last Battle is like wrapping up the whole series. And I gave it 1 star. I did somewhat of a reading vlog, but without like filming it, and it's up on my Goodreads, and I basically just like detailed my thoughts from chapter to chapter, because this is the one that I finished this year, and I just have really strong thoughts in the series, and so I wanted to detail my thoughts on every chapter of this book. The reason this book is getting 1 star is because it is an extremely sexist book. It is extremely racist. If you have only one small group of people in the book who are people of color, and if you villainize those people for no reason, and if you say crap like, that person would be attractive if they weren't a person of color, then I'm sorry, but you're a racist piece of crap. Yes, C.S. Lewis, you are racist and sexist, and I'm done with you. Bam. The reason it isn't the final one in my ranking is because at least there were things that were happening that were like, I wouldn't say interesting, but at least like things were happening. The final book in my ranking is one that I agree that most people would not say is their favorite. The Horse and His Boy. Can I tell you anything about this book? No. Is it boring as heck, and did my brain purposefully force me to forget everything in the book? Yes, yes, yes. There is sexism throughout this book, and all I remember is it's something about a boy traveling with a horse, and it is literally one of the most boring books that you will ever read in your life if you decide to read the Narnia series. Literally, like, it doesn't even connect very much to the other books. I think Susan is mentioned once. Just like skip this book, and the rest of the series will just be like as it is. Like, there was no need for this book, if I'm being quite honest. Also, this book, I hate what C.S. Lewis did to Susan. Like, yes, Susan is a female, but you don't have to treat her like crap just because she's a female. Anyways, back to this one. The most boring book that you'll ever read. Like, you know those parts in movies and books where there's a character traveling on a horse. And you're like, yay, horse time, you're traveling on a horse. And then you're like, okay, 30 seconds, we get it, you're in the next location. That's essentially this book, like, traveling on a horse. The 30 seconds is up, why are you still on this horse? Oh shoot, we're 200 pages in, why are you still on this horse? Why has nothing happened? That is essentially this book. Okay, that was my ranking. My ranking was The Silver Chair, then The Voyage of the Dawn Trader, then The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, then The Magician's Nephew, then Prince Caspian, then The Last Battle, then The Horse and His Boy. That is from best to worst. And I am so thankful that I am done with this series. Like, do not read this series. Please don't. Don't force your kid to read this series, because if you do, like, they're gonna be reading so much sexism and racism, and like sexism and racism are taught. So if you're like giving kids books, they'll learn stuff from the books. Don't teach them sexism and racism when they're a literal child. Don't even teach them when they're an adult. Like, don't read this series with your kids unless you have honest conversation with your kids about why this series is problematic. Also, for like people saying that like, oh my gosh, it's a Christian series, like Christian kids need to read it. So you see this book right here, the final book in the series. There's literally a part in this book where the Calormans are essentially like Satanists because they worship Tash. And Aslan said, Tash is my opposite. And Aslan is God and Jesus. And the opposite of Jesus is Satan. And then he says, if you worship Tash in a good way, then you will go to heaven. Did you catch that? So if you worship Satan in a good way, you will go to heaven? Like, I don't know if C.S. Lewis was like on drugs when he wrote that part, but he did not just tell some Christian readers that Satanists will go to heaven as long as they don't do anything extremely sinful when they're worshipping Satan. Make it make sense, please. Anyways, that is all for this video. If you found this video entertaining, feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you have any thoughts on the Narnia series, then leave them down in the description below. I really recommend that if you really enjoyed the series when you were younger, like, don't like advocate like, oh my gosh, this is such a good series. Like, critically analyze the series before you go and defend this series. Let me just say that, like, you are going to embarrass yourself if you think that this series is not sexist and racist. Like, I legitimately enjoyed The Silver Chair when I was younger, but like, I would not go around saying like, that's my favorite book and defend it if people don't like it, because I've been opened, my eyes have been opened since I was a little one. Anyways, yes, feel free to subscribe to me. I upload book videos every Tuesday. I promise that my next book video won't be as insane as this one, because I normally don't criticize a series this passionately, but like, I have to with this series because it is so sexist. I will see all of you later. My Goodreads, Bookstagram, all of that jazz will be down in the description below. Hope all of you are having a happy 2021, and I will see all of you in my next video. Goodbye!